the interesting and difficult thing about traumatic events is that we can experience the same thing and you can be totally fine, and I might develop PTSD. So it's really hard to say this event was traumatizing for you. I think it's important it's the impact of the event that makes it traumatizing or not. For me, the bombings were traumatizing, and I didn't realize that because it was so normalized by my family. It was like, you know, when kids are like, remember that time we went to the park? Remember that time we got bombed? Like, it was that kind of casualty that we talked about it. So I was like, oh, this is totally normal. And what I didn't do is I didn't think about how something like that during my formative years would have become an obstacle to being myself. And so trauma doesn't necessarily have to lead to self-loss, but it sure as hell doesn't help because it becomes an obstacle or a hindrance, because it becomes unsafe to explore because we have other priorities like self-preservation. So for me, instead of, being, 7, thinking about expressing myself and being curious and aware, all I thought about was preservation.
Yeah.
And I think the Balkans is an interesting example, at least in my personal experience, is like everyone acts like they're in self-preservation and everyone acts like it's normal.
Yeah.
And so we're having a trauma response that's being normalized. And that, I think, gets really, really confusing because as much as we want to be like, screw society, I'm just going to do this on my own, you can't. You, as Heidegger said, you're part of the world is part of you. You need that mirror to reflect back to you. So I needed my therapist to tell me, Sarah, that was traumatic for you. I needed her to say that before I could go, wow, that was traumatic for me, because no one ever had.
Yeah.
And that's interesting of like, we need that mirror to validate our own existence. And it doesn't matter how independent and competent you are, make sure you find people who are willing to see you, willing to see your experiences for what they truly are and reflect them back.
But also...
And not their own experiences, right? Because people are like, I will reflect back to you how I experienced the war. It's like, I don't care. I need you to reflect back how I experience. I need you to validate my experience.
Yeah. Well, hence the therapy.
Hence the therapy.
But,
perfect.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I have a question about it. That concerning Heidegger also at the same time. So, do we have to remove ourselves from that point in order to reveal that previous experience as traumatic? So
environmentally, time.
Could you get to the same point if you stayed here, or you had to be, move away, migrate to Canada, and then with time passing by and with the distance.
Yeah.
And which changed
watching a different culture, watching different kids have completely different childhoods and experiences. That definitely helped me.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, I remember things.
But is it a necessity?
I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it sure as heck makes it easier. But I don't think it's necessary. I just think it makes it harder because you have to stand up within the culture and go, well, this is not normal. And you hopefully will find a couple people that agree with you.
Yeah, because it becomes extremely difficult to anchor yourself to something we can call a reference point if everything is normalized and there is nothing to be anchored at. So how finding your footing, the starting point from which you can start your journey to better yourself.
And that's kind of leads us back to like my original story of like not knowing there's an alternative. Right? And when there's cultural trauma, so a group of people collectively experiencing the same trauma, it is so hard for anyone to envision a reality that isn't theirs.
Yeah.
And so I do think we lose perspective, and I think trauma becomes almost intensified in contexts like that. So if you stayed here after the war, depending on what your experience is. I know some people are like, that was fun. I got to skip school. And kudos to you. You know, like that's awesome if that was your takeaway. And that's why trauma is an interesting thing. They lived through the same things as me and they don't care. They were like, that was great. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, it really, like, yeah. You know, and don't be ashamed of your experience. But I think if you stayed within that culture, you have the task of really going inward and going, what was that like for me? Not what is the narrative of what that was like. How do I feel in my body when I talk about it? Yeah. What emotions come up for me? Because we can all joke about it, but if you're tearing up, if your heart is racing, if you feel like something in the pit of your stomach, then maybe it wasn't so okay for you.